All right, guys, change of plans. So since the rendering engine is kind of crashing too many of us, particularly me, let's move ahead to the next segment, and then we'll kind of loop back to the rendering portion of this module later on, hopefully next week. So the other part of this module is the introduction to multimedia design. And the first thing that you need to understand when you start getting into multimedia, which means like mixing different types of representation, is basically you need to understand the difference between vector and raster and how to control the two. So we're kind of using a combination of our rendering engine output as a raster image, so that's like a Photoshop file, and we're going to be using Illustrator in conjunction with that. Okay, so what I'm going to show you tonight is extremely elementary. We're not going to do a lot with it, but I'll show you just a quick recap. I don't think Illustrator was one of the software packages that you guys knew as well as the rest. Do I have that sort of right? Raise your hand if you like know Illustrator at like a level 1, like you kind of know how to do a few things in it. Okay, so most of you, all right, so like probably you guys feel comfortable if I asked you to do a drawing in Illustrator, you could do it?
Pen tool is a 0 out of 10.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So that's about where I thought. Anyway, so I'll kind of recap some simple line tools and line control methods, and then basically we'll kind of get going from there and just grow. So I guess the first thing that you need to do is figure out the exact size of your image. If you're going to be editing your images in Illustrator, if you drop it into Illustrator, it doesn't really behave the way it would in Photoshop. So the one I'm going to work on is this one right here. But if I just kind of drop it into Illustrator like that to open up the file, it's going to open up the file. Whoops. Sorry. It's going to open up the file, but it's going to do it via the default canvas. So that default canvas is like really small in comparison to the image itself. Okay, so I want to make sure that I know exactly what that image size is, and if I recall correctly, I don't think we did a strict resolution for this one, did we? It was a little oddly sized, I believe. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I don't recall, so let's assume we don't recall what it is, because I don't. You can just drop that image in Photoshop and it'll tell you. Or you might be able to do the size here in Explorer. Nah. Anyway, so just go to image, image size. So we're 2200 pixels by 1700 pixels. So now we go back into Illustrator, and I can just go to document setup and edit artboards, and I can change this artboard to be exactly that, 2200 by 1700. So I'm going to change my width here to 2200 and my height to 1700, and that's the exact size of my image. So in order to exit editing the artboard, just click on your selection tool or any other tool for that matter, and then when I go back to my image and I just drag and drop it, or I guess now that my file's in there, I have to go to File, Place. Let's see, copy, paste. There we go. That should be the exact size. Does that make sense? I take your silence as a resounding yes. Okay, great. So really, I mean, setting up the image and getting it into Illustrator, that's about all there is to that. Do any of you have any questions before we go back into Rhino and start to get some vector line work to drop on top of it? No? Okay.